All right, hello, welcome to the last breakout session of today. This is Let Go and Let God, Self-Care for the Caregiver, given to us by Kristina Baktis. A wonderful speaker for today. So a little bit about Kristina. She is a licensed art therapist and art therapy supervisor with over a decade of experience working in the field. Sorry. Kristina currently works in an intensive outpatient program. She facilitates group therapy for adults with PTSD, bipolar, substance use disorder, and depression. And she, I think, has lots of hands-on activities for us today, so we're excited to hear from her. Thanks, Kristina.
Hey. Good afternoon, everyone. As a therapist, for this presentation on self-care, this is really a presentation that I need for myself because I was working in an intensive outpatient program with people who are high risk for suicide, high risk for relapse. It is a very intense level of work, and so we need a lot of ways of taking care of ourselves. So our objectives for today, I just kind of want to orient you first to some of the materials that you have. So in front of you, you have a copy of a set of prayers, a copy of my slides with all the information on them, and then a handout with 8 dimensions of wellness, and then there's some various art supplies. And so our objectives for today is that we're going to identify our countertransference in caring for addicts. We're going to reflect on how countertransference impacts our ability to be a conduit for Christ's healing of the addict. And we're going to learn some practical ways to tend to your spiritual and emotional needs while caring for addicts. So we're going to start with the practical ways, because I don't want that to be like the last 10 minutes of the workshop. We're trying to cram that in. So what we're going to do today is create a prayer journal. So if you've just joined us and you're sitting where there are not art supplies, I invite you to move forward to some place where there is some art supplies. So we have a prayer journal. Prayer journals are a personal notebook used to collect your favorite prayers, scripture verses, hymns, write names of people to pray for, document gratitude, and write your own prayers. Prayer journals help us to deepen our faith, track answered prayers, foster a more intentional and reflective prayer life. And I have a sample of a prayer journal up here if you want to take a look at it before or after during the presentation. My own prayer journal, I started keeping when I was an intern in grad school. And so I have a list of names of clients that I've worked with since 2009. That sometimes I go through and I just say a prayer for all of them. I don't always remember out of like the 30 Johns that are in my prayer list or the 25 Kathys who those all are, but God remembers who they are. So this is a nice way to keep track, keep memory, and keep track of your prayers. So throughout this presentation, I invite you to work on this. So we have some art supplies, so you can decorate your prayer journal, you can write down some things. If anything stands out to you during my presentation, you want to make a note of that in your prayer journal, go ahead and do that.
So do this while you're talking?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're sitting where there are no art supplies, I invite you to come forward and to sit at one of the spots where we've got the materials laid out for you.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. Is this prayer journal about our patients or our personal prayer journal?
Both. So you can include things for your personal prayers. So if you want to include things about your family, friends, your own struggles, you can include that, or specifically about your patients. So I want to start out with what is your why? Have some Backstreet Boys up here, so tell me why. Why did you choose your vocation? Right? Why did you get into this helping profession? And I think for most of us, right, we're responding to Christ's call to feed the hungry, take in the stranger, clothe the naked, visit the sick, and those in prison. We want to use our talents to bring Christ's healing, love, and mercy to the world. But something happens along the way, whether it is the burdens of working in the modern healthcare system, where it seems like we're asked to see more patients in a less amount of time, whether it's a strain of, seeing patients who are chronically coming back to treatment or struggling to accept our interventions or our advice. Something gets in the way. And so we have a couple of things to point out. Is when somebody seems to not accept our support, all of the training that we've done, all of the hard work that we've done to succeed in our helping profession. When people come to us for help and we're like, this is what you need to do, and they seem to reject that, we get hurt. And we respond out of that hurt. And so we have a couple quotes here from Dr. Hinshaw on his book on suffering and the nature of healing, that our training doesn't adequately prepare us for bad outcomes. So when a patient relapses or treatment doesn't work, we state that the patient has failed treatment rather than inadequate treatment has failed the patient. We might fall into an expert stance, talking down to patients, focusing on their defects, their diagnosis. We forget that we're not the only experts in the room, that the patient is actually an expert in themselves. And we want what's best for somebody else. We don't want to see other people hurting themselves, suffering, in pain. And so it's very easily to shift from helping to controlling when they seem to protect the very thing that is destroying them. And this we call in therapy countertransference. Okay? Our emotional reactions, both conscious and unconscious towards the clients, which are influenced by our own personal history, our feelings, our unresolved conflicts. So some of the things that either I've said or I hear from my colleagues are, he's just resistant. He's not ready to change. She's engaging in treatment, interfering behavior. I'm not going to work harder than they are. I'm not going to chase them down. I'm not going to make them do this. Another one that I've heard recently is he's just a help-rejecting complainer. And so we put these labels on the patient out of a reaction of our own emotions, our own hurt, our own fear. This is an example of how fear, the roles we take on when we experience fear in relationships. And working with people with an addiction, it's a very scary process. I mean, people die as a result of their addictions. So it's a natural, normal inclination to have fear, to have anxiety about their well-being. But what happens is that fear kind of gets warped and twisted, and how we express that, we can, one, be in this trauma triangle model where we maybe rotate through the roles of victim, rescuer, perpetrator, or bystander. So rescuer, right? Somebody is engaging in addictive behavior. We want to jump in and save them. We want to commit them. We want to send them to rehab. We want to take over and take care of them, protect them. When that doesn't work, we might turn into the role of a perpetrator. If you're not going to comply with treatment, I'm administratively discharging you. If you're not going to get sober, you can't live with me. If you are, you can stay here, but if you have 3 positive UDSs, then you're discharged, right? So we turn into the role of perpetrator, or we can take on the role of victim. I'm offering this person all of this advice, all of this support, and they're not taking it. I have to see all of these patients, and I don't have enough time to do my notes, and I don't have enough time to really give the patients the time that they need, and, I'm just a victim in the larger healthcare system. Or we might go into the role of bystander. It's not my problem. It's for them to work out. I'm not getting involved. So all of those might have initially helped us to survive a relationship, but it ultimately prevents us from developing healthy relationships. So we want to move to this role of, to the recovery triangle, and move to the role of from victim to thriver. As a thriver, I might say, okay, I only have 15 minutes to see this person, but what am I going to do with those 15 minutes? How am I most effectively going to use that? As a thriver, I might say, this job isn't allowing me to really support people the way that I need, or to take care of myself, and I need to look to move to a different role or a different job. As a coach, I like to think of coaches as, coach on a football team doesn't go out and say like, it's okay, I'll go play the game for you so you don't get hurt, or you're not doing a great job throwing the ball, I'll throw it for you. The coach gives you the skills in order to be better, in order to do what you need to do. So when I'm talking to my patients about how they're going to use holding ice against their face as a way of grounding themselves instead of using a substance, we talk about, let's practice that here in the session. And how are you going to have ice in different situations where you might need to be grounded? How are you going to access ice if you're at the supermarket, if you are at work, if you're in the car? So how are you going to use this skill in all these different situations? That's the role of the coach. The role of the challenger is to set boundaries, call out behavior that might be harmful, but also allow for somebody to make their own choices. So as a challenger, I might say to a patient, this is our crisis number that you can call after hours if you feel like using a substance. Call this number first. I recommend that you save it in your phone, in your contacts as a favorite. If they say, I took a picture of the phone number, and that's enough, that I have it with me, I have to respect that that is their choice and their process, and that may or may not work for them. I can't force them to now save that number in their contacts or take their phone away from them and save the number in their contacts. And then the observer looks at the situation and sees, do I need to get involved? Or is this something that this person can struggle with and work out themselves? So how do we move from this role of the trauma triangle to the recovery triangle? How do we move from rescuer to coach, from victim to thriver? And part of it is we have to let go. So the second step of 12-step recovery came to believe that there is a power greater than myself that could restore us to sanity. So there is a God, and it's not me. That might be kind of obvious. However, sometimes our behavior suggests otherwise. We act in a way as if we believe that, yes, I am in control of this. Maybe I'm not God, but maybe God has assigned me to be the regional manager of Princeton, New Jersey, and is very happy to give me control over this situation. So I have to remember that I am not the one that's doing the healing, that God is doing the healing in this person's life. I also have to recognize the image of God in the patient that I'm working with. So I have a patient that I work with who has, in the 2 years that I've been working at this one location, has come into our program probably 6 times, has completed the program successfully once. And she was having a conversation with another patient, and the patient was saying, I don't know why Kristina says that I'm creative and that my artwork is good. My artwork's not that great. And my patient said to her, well, Kristina doesn't care what we're making. Kristina sees the artwork inside of us. So we want to recognize that this person in front of us is created in the image and likeness of God, no matter what their behavior is suggesting. View ourselves as a guide walking alongside this person. And I have a couple of just quotes about free will. God created us with free will. So God doesn't force us to worship him. God doesn't force us to behave in a certain way. God allows us to choose. He gives us these options and allows us to choose. And that is our God-given created nature. So when we try to constrain other people and to force their choices, naturally they're going to rebel against that because that's not what God intended them for. So We want to try to acknowledge someone's freedom of choice so that we can diminish their defensiveness and facilitate change. I want to speak a little bit about recovery from addiction and how it parallels with our own process of self-care. So I have a picture here of the Gerasene demoniac and Christ healing him. And we want to look at addiction, as we've talked about through this whole conference. Addiction itself is not a sin. It's a soul sickness. It's a spiritual bondage. It's a condition of the soul in distress. And so recovery, one, comes from relieving ourselves from this bondage, but also comes from how do we treat the pain? How do we treat the reason why we're trying to self-regulate? So we engage in certain behaviors as a result of this sickness in an attempt to self-regulate. Those behaviors might be sins, but the attempt to, the soul sickness is not a sin. So recovery is a process. Even if we look at the account of the healing of the demoniac, Christ returned him to his right mind and placed him back in his community, but then he still had to go and be a part of the community. And so this is a lifelong process that we're working towards. So I have a couple quotes up here. Recovery is not a return from a mistake. It is a movement forward into discipleship. It is a way of life that matures over time as those who are recovering seek God's will for their sober lives. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. Principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress, not perfection. And in Christian terms, recovery refers to the rediscovering and refurbishing of the divine image in which we were all created. It consists of a lengthy pilgrimage that leads us to identify all that is not of God and to make new, healthy, and holy choices in our lives. So in a couple of the presentations here, we talked about how, for example, detox is not the end of recovery. It's just the beginning. Or stopping using the substance isn't the end of recovery. It's just the beginning. Right? So we're working at rebuilding, changing our behavior, changing our life over the whole entirety of our life. And what does this look like? So when Jesus healed the demoniac, we have that then they came to Jesus and saw that the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion sitting and clothed in his right mind. So he went from somebody who needed to be chained, living amongst the tombs, to somebody who was sitting and clothed in his right mind, able to engage in his community again. Living fully, usefully, and freely, reaching towards our potential. Having a restored capacity to find pleasure in life and fully engage in relationships with others. So being able to find joy and meaning in life, healed relationships. A deep desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. So these themes of connection, of usefulness, of service, of joy, those are the aspects that we're looking for in recovery. So now let's talk about self-care. How does that look? So self-care has often been reduced to a hashtag. So taking a bubble bath, going golfing, buying a latte, all those things are great, but those are just moments. And we're looking at how to create this continual process, how to make self-care a way of life. So not something that you do outside of your normal day-to-day life. You know, I live my life, I come to a conference, that's self-care. I go back to my life. After work, I do this for self-care. We want to look at how can we integrate and incorporate this throughout our whole life, and how do we make this meaningful self-care. So we have 8 dimensions of wellness, and in your packet of information, you have this information for the 8 dimensions of wellness. What I like about the packet is that it breaks everything down into categories. So, what do you need for spiritual wellness? What do you need for environmental wellness? What do you need for intellectual wellness? And then it has a section with what are you going to do and what do you need in order to accomplish that. So if I am going to focus on reducing the amount of exposure to chemicals in my home, what do I need to do that? If I am looking to address my physical pain, what do I need to do that? And so there's a helpful process in how to assess these dimensions, how to tend to them, which areas are you doing well in, and which areas do you need some support in. And this may change over the course of our life. Some areas we might feel like we're doing better at some points in our life than others. So really focusing in on making sure that we're tending to all these areas of self-care. Meaningful self-care, what does that look like? So it looks like having a balance of nourishment and fasting. Sometimes we need to refrain from certain activities, certain people, certain experiences in our life, and sometimes we need more. So assessing and discerning between nourishment and fasting. The same thing with balance of work and leisure. Am I overworking? Am I not taking time for myself? Am I trying to cram all that I can into my 24 hours? Or am I taking lots of time off and maybe not working as much as I need to? So that balance, thoughtful denial of excess, making sure we're making time for prayer and for silence, participation in the sacraments, confession of sins, humility and repentance, establishing boundaries. And this can look like establishing boundaries with our family members, our friends, in our work relationships, in our volunteer activities. So I think the Orthodox Church is notorious for if you show up and you're competent and you do on one board, then like 5 other boards will ask you to also be a member. And so how can I establish some boundaries with those? How can I say no or say not yet? Clinical supervision and therapy. This is super important because we can't treat people with trauma, with addictions by ourselves. We need community. We need to be checking in. So I need to be getting supervision and consultation so that I can make sure that my own stuff isn't clouding my care and my ability to be a healing presence for somebody else. I might need to go to my own therapy and work on my anxiety, work on my own trauma, work on the trauma of the experience of working with people who have trauma. And then also social connection and support. How are we engaging in meaningful and restorative relationships in our community? How are we getting support? And I placed the icon of St. Mary of Egypt and St. Zosima on this slide because I think that it's a really great example of a healing relationship with a professional and an addict, right? So we have St. Zosima, who is like, I'm the holiest person I know. I've perfected everything. And then he goes into the desert and he meets St. Mary of Egypt. And then that's where his pride and his ego are really checked. And he experiences humility, right? And he learns from her. And so this is a great example of how we can do that in our own relationships with the patients that we work with. So this is a quote from the last page of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think it encapsulates a lot of the points we're talking about today in terms of self-care. So I'll read this out to you. So our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little, right? So we're expressing humility. We know a little bit. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who's still sick. So are we praying every morning for how I can be a healing presence? What can I do for this person who's still sick that I'm working with? The answers will come if your own house is in order, but obviously you can't transmit something you haven't got. So again, I have to go to supervision, I have to go to therapy, I have to go to confession to make sure that I'm clearing out all of this. I'm keeping my own house in order. See to it that your relationship with God is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. If I'm able to connect with God every day and ask him how I can be a healing presence, then I'll be of great use in healing to others. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. So again, if I've made a mistake, if I've tried to be an expert to my patient instead of listening to what their needs and their concerns are and trying to force my will on them instead of collaborating with them, I need to admit that fault to them. Again, going to confession, repentance, clear away the wreckage of my past, work through all of my own anxiety, my own trauma, my own addictions, clear that out so that I can be of service. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you'll surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you till then. So, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to share anything about your experience of working on your prayer journal?
Thank you. This was a fantastic idea. Fantastic.
Don't you think everybody should be here?
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Please tell the president.
I can arrange that.
Yes, you have
I guess I have a couple questions because I have a couple questions. I know who St. Mary of Egypt and who St. Dimphna are. I have asked for St. Dimphna's intercessions when dealing with clients or an overbearing supervisor, and that has helped me. But I don't know. I think this pan to.
Yes, so the icon cards that are out,
Yes.
there's St. Pantaleimon, who is, he was a physician, and he was also martyred because he was providing healthcare to prisoners and people that the state thought shouldn't receive healthcare. So St. Pantaleimon, St. Cosmos and Damian, who are also the patron saints of OCAMPR, and physicians, and St. Anastasia is the other icon, St. Dimphna, who's patron saint of mental health, and St. Mary of Egypt.
All right, I wasn't sure who the other one was. Thank you.
You're welcome.
In my clinical practice, I often work with patients who have existential distress, and it seems like there is no answer for their cancer diagnosis, and especially for my Christian patients who are responding to prayers, I tell them that I will say my prayers about 5 o'clock at the end of the day, that's when I pray, but I would confess I don't always do it, and so I really appreciate now the framework and the showing us and showing me how to actually have a prayer journal at my work, so that I keep really being honest with them and to myself, praying for them. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure out loud that there's no wrong way to do a prayer. I just want to make sure to confirm with Kristina that there's no wrong way to do a prayer journal.
The only wrong way to do a prayer journal is to not do a prayer journal.
And I'm doing it and I feel bad about how I'm doing it. I'm like, this is horrible. I'm like, Anna, you're missing the point. It's not about doing a good job with your prayer journal. So.
You don't get graded on your prayer journal.
Right, you don't get graded on the prayer journal.
That was the snarky way of asking that question, is when does this get graded? So I figured I'd say the nice one will be, which is just checking in and making it.
One of my stickers, Mina, says, pray more, worry less.
Yes, thank you.
The other thing about the prayer journal too is that sometimes we're rushing through our day and we're carrying this our patients, carrying our interactions with our coworkers or our supervisors, and so this can be a place to just like drop something off to refer to it later. So we can write down a little note, write down somebody's name, and then come back to it when we have some more time for really reflection and processing. Also, there's a lot of different prayers. There's a lot of great prayer books. I find it easier to have the prayer journal where I have a collection of prayers that I find useful in one spot. And so I've cut up prayer books that I have, just the prayers that I really like or find useful or helpful, scripture quotes from sermons or from workshops, put all of that in there as well. Writing things that you're grateful for. So we have a negativity bias where we focus in on things that are going wrong. Okay, it's a function of our survival. So to take this also as a space where we can write some gratitude. What were the positive interactions that we had?
I love this activity. Did you say you also have your clients do this?
The question was, do I also have my clients do this? I don't have them. I work in a setting where I primarily work with people of lots of different faiths, so I don't have them do a prayer journal. I suggest journaling, having an art journal, having a gratitude journal, things that I enjoyed today journal, so writing down like one thing that was positive or something that you enjoyed. But in my work with church school, with youth ministry, this is something that I incorporate into
That's
those.
what I was just thinking, like with the Goya, the Yo, and I just gotta say, I really enjoyed this, and I really appreciate you talking about how we should take care of ourselves and the importance of repentance, going to confession and getting communion. I get people at my church are like, "You're always going for communion," or you get out and it's just like, "Well, I need it." It's just like, we all should be doing this. But it's interesting that you find a lot of people who grew up where they only took it 3 times a year. Yes. And it's just, wow, what? If that. The Doomsday, Pascha, maybe Christmas, and it's so sad, to see that.
Why are you always taking your medicine? Why do you do that?
Yeah, and that coming from the belief that, so as Orthodox Christians, we should be constantly in a state of preparing to be worthy to receive the Eucharist, right? So if I'm not going to confession on a regular basis, then I haven't properly prepared to receive communion when it's offered on Sunday or during the week. Or, if I have a resentment against somebody and I'm holding on to that, maybe I got into a fight with my family in the car on the way to church, right? I need to, apologize and ask for forgiveness, and then I can receive communion. So I think that these are things that we should be doing in a regular practice, so that we can then, participate in the liturgy, commune with Christ, so that we can then go back out into the world and be that healing presence, bring Christ with us. Definitely during COVID, when I was working in an inpatient hospital, and we weren't able to have services, but because my dad's the priest, so my mom and I were the choir, so we were having services. If I wasn't receiving communion during that time, I don't think I would have been able to show up and work in a hospital during COVID with psychiatric patients. If I wasn't able to do that. So that's definitely part of our self-care.
So I was looking at the prayers, and the AA 12 and 12 discusses the prayer of St. Francis. They don't name it specifically, but I printed off a copy of that prayer for my clients. I do a group once a week where we discuss, I kind of educate them about the 12 steps. And this elderly black man, he's over 70 years old, he's new in treatment, and I work in a prison, so I can't take this book in with me, but I gave him a copy of the prayer, and he's just blown away, and now he's reading that prayer every day because he wants to learn to understand instead of having to be understood. He wants to learn to forgive instead of being forgiven. He wants to do all those things, and he had never heard of St. Francis. He didn't know anything about this. And so, these prayers, mean so much and can do so much for people, including ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Another prayer that's included in here is a prayer for when you have a resentment against somebody, which that was suggested.
We're gonna skip that one.
That was suggested to me that whenever I have a resentment against somebody, I need to pray that prayer for them until my feelings towards them change.
I don't want to do.
I had 529 of
That's not in our ordinary prayer book, so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That is something that I really
Tell you where my mind is.
I'm not making any promises, but I have prayed that prayer sometimes when I struggle with certain coworkers, and they have switched jobs.
I don't think that's the point.
I'm not saying that that's what's going to
I'm saying
happen,
that's what I'm going to do now, is pray for that reason. That doesn't mean that that's...
but that might be an outcome of that prayer. And God no longer needed that person to be in my life to teach me a lesson, and they were able to move on.
I'll get right on it. Thank you.
On the other hand, I had a supervisor who, when I first got sober, she and I would literally stand inches away from each other and yell at each other. It was a very unhealthy relationship. And when I saw that page in the big book, I started just asking, and at first it's like, yeah, Lord, give that, so-and-so, all the blessings, love. I didn't even mean it at first, but then I kept saying that prayer every day, and eventually she and I actually became very good friends. And we both moved on to other jobs, and we remained in touch for a few years after that. So it can work. I don't know how, but it works.
Yeah, it's nice the way that prayer can help to transform our attitude and to help us to really see that this person's also created in the image and likeness of God, and God loves this person as much as he loves me. And even though I find them annoying, and they probably find me annoying, can I try to see them through God's eyes?
what do you do while your patients are creating their art? Do you also create? Do you sit and watch, reflect?
Yeah, so in group art therapy sessions, I make some artwork alongside my clients. So nothing really complicated. I usually do either a watercolor, doodle, so I paint a lot of circles and then draw designs on top of them. Those I'll cut up and make cards so that when my patients discharge, I write them a little note that they can take with them. Or I'll crochet or knit, so do something that's simple, nothing complicated, because I'm still facilitating the session, so I need to be able to stop and help them or to observe what's going on, how people are interacting with the materials. But making art alongside people is great because then I'm not creepily staring at them and they don't feel uncomfortable. I took a painting class that I took a long time ago. Every time the professor came up behind me, I just stopped painting. And he was like, "You can keep painting." I was like, nope, I can't. And then when he walked away, I kept painting, so.
How can the prayer journal be adapted and introduced to medical teams whose members are not Christian and may not be writing prayers but journaling? But what exactly you would suggest them to journal?
Yeah, so in the context of maybe providing support for our colleagues or for other people that we're working with who might not want to create a prayer journal, I would look at it as this is a space where you can have a holding place for things that you're struggling with. So again, thinking about the concept of time and how, I'm, for myself and for my coworkers, I'm running a men's trauma art therapy group, and then after that, I'm running a group, I have maybe 15 minutes to write my notes, do billing, and then I'm running a group on cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and then I'm running a grief and loss group, and then I'm eating lunch, and then I'm running another group, right? So there's a lot of going from one thing to the other, and so this can be a place where you could just jot something down and then come back and kind of let go of all that, a place to hold that, to create, either to journal, to create art. If they are somebody that has spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, I would encourage them to put prayers or meditations in there from their own tradition. Again, a place to put a gratitude. So there's a practice that a lot of people do with their families of at the end of the day doing a rose and a thorn. So what was your rose? What was the good thing that happened today? What's your thorn? What's the bad thing that happened today? And so that's something that you could put in here. What was a bad thing that happened? What was a good thing that happened? We have about 15 minutes that you can keep working on your prayer journals before we'll have to stop and clean up and go on to the next wrap up.
Or we could just skip the next session. I hear it's going to be boring anyway. It's mine. It's me.
Or you could just bring everybody here and they can keep working on prayer journals as the wrap up.
It's like the next session is the discussion groups in here. We might just tell people come on in. We're not going to discuss that. Just make a prayer journal. Forget the questions.
Isn't it supposed to be the sum up of the day?
Yeah, we don't actually need to clean up. We can just tell people, hey, come. We can discuss, and if you want to do your prayer journal exercise as a reflection on the thing, is that allowed? Or does it have to be prayer?
There are no rules.
There are no rules. I mean, if you're running the next session and you would like people to
Yeah,
reflect.
Randa made the mistake of putting me in charge of it, so.
Yeah. I have some extra journals that I don't want to
Exactly,
take back
You're
with
like,
me.
sorry,
So.
you did this to yourself. Like, now we're journaling.
Do you journal every day?
No. So I don't journal every day. That's like an ideal. But I am incorporating journaling, and particularly art journaling. So creating some artwork about the situation on a more regular basis.
Awesome.
Do you have suggestions for people for like art journaling and stuff who aren't actually good artists?
So art is a language, just like anything else, and with more practice, you improve your ability to speak that language. So one is just to start and to do it, and start with materials that you feel comfortable with. So if it is collage, sometimes that's really great because you're cutting out pre-made images, or, I have some stickers here, so we're starting with that, or with images and words from magazines. Another thing too is just to start with like a color. So what's a color from the markers or the pencil that stands out to you right now for what you're feeling, and go with that. Art can also be transformative, so you don't have to stick with what you made in the 15 minutes that you art journaled today. That doesn't have to stay there permanently. You can go back and rework it and put layers on top of it, transform it, change it. So that would be my suggestion. Start with something that you're comfortable with. It's also your journal, so you're making it for yourself. You don't have to show it to anybody. And so sometimes we can get in our heads about, someone's going to see this, what are they going to say? But if it's just for me, it can be ugly. And maybe that's how I'm feeling today, is something that's like ugly and messy and not a perfect Instagrammable piece of artwork.
Pray more, worry less.
Yes, pray more, worry less. And that act of creating something that is uncomfortable, that we don't like, building the tolerance for that, helps to reduce our anxiety about then trying new things and making a mistake.
I'm curious, in your wealth of group experience, how do you negotiate and kind of handle affirmations, or kind of like self-affirmations? That is something that I run into challenges with in a group setting where you've got such a diversity of perspectives and what people will find affirming and where their center and their start point is to like come up with something universal and generic enough to land. Just curious.
Yeah. So I'm constantly learning from my patients as to what works and what doesn't. So there's things that I've even brought to groups and have used them successfully, and everybody really enjoyed them or connected to them. And then I bring them to another group, and a patient is like, "That's offensive." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. What's offensive about that, or what don't you like about this?" So I encourage the group. I'll bring some basic affirmations. Sometimes of like, perfection is the enemy of the good. I am enough. Those kinds of things, and then also ask the group to come up with their own and what works for them.
for all the supplies and thank you so much for the journal that you provided for us. It's really appreciated.
You're welcome.
I'm curious, practical question. These are really dandy little books. Where did you get them?
I got them from Amazon.
What is the Amazon?
What do you find them listed as?
They are
Really cool books.
Yeah, I put my cross off center.
okay, on Amazon they're listed as craft notebooks for kids, blank journals, bulk sketchbooks, 60-page composition notebook. So if you just Google blank craft notebooks
For kids.
for kids.
Kids of all ages. Can I say something else? This is not being recorded, right?
I mean,
Everything is recorded.
Okay, I'll tell you later.
No, we are curious now.
No, it's very, I was gonna share it, it's very private.
okay, well maybe, because this will be, existing on the internet till the second coming of Christ, so
Yeah,
don't say it now.
yes,
You can say it
that was the
afterwards.
nature of the question.
Yeah.
So, and is the store on the Amazon store, is it Paper Junkie? So, because what I really like about these is that they're sewn.
Yeah.
Right,
The store is called EO Out.
EO.
EO.
I do not know.
Do you drink anything in it? Do you drink it?
I don't.
So we just have a few minutes left before we have to transition to the next session. Thank you all for coming and participating in this workshop.
Thank you.